Our interview today is somewhat unusual. We decided to talk to an American who has been living in Ukraine for about 4 years. He remembers the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and together with Ukrainians is going through a difficult period for our country, staying here in Ukraine. How does a foreigner see the situation in Ukraine, and what does he feel staying here despite the shelling, social problems, and in fact, despite the treat to life? This is about human position, about faith, and about the desire to support. How does he feel about the politics surrounding the war in Ukraine? How does he perceive the statements of world leaders? How much has the current position of official Washington become clear to him? We are talking about all this with an American, Charles William Vincent, who lives in Ukraine now. Thank you for joining this stream, Mr. Charles.
Oh, Albina, thank you for inviting me this evening.
So my first question, I'd like to ask our Institute audience, before I ask you a question, I would like to ask our Institute audience to send their comments on our dialogue, mark this like our stream if you like it, and if you want more people may watch this conversation, so please press the button like under this video. And let's start with the topic that the whole world is discussing right now. You are an American living in Ukraine. How do you see the events that took place the day before in the White House? What could be the real reason for such the behavior of President Trump himself and his administration representatives towards the President of Ukraine and Ukraine delegation?
Well, I'm sure, like a lot of people, I was horrified when I watched that event at the White House in the Oval Office. I think that personally, I think that it was orchestrated and staged. I think that President Trump was looking for someone to blame if he can't secure a peace in this war. And they decided that they were going to set up President Zelensky to be what I would call the fall person. For me, it was sad to watch. I can't imagine what it would have been like for President Zelensky to be sitting in that room alone, essentially by himself, being attacked by the president and the vice president. It seems to me that when you invite somebody into your home, that you should treat them with respect. And I think he was totally disrespected. I was happy to see that he didn't just take it, that he stood up for himself. I think it was the right thing to do. I think the reason that when I look back on what took place since President Trump was inaugurated, and shortly after he was inaugurated, he had a press conference, or he was signing some executive orders, and he was asked about Russia and Ukrainian war. And what he said was that if President Putin didn't agree to a talks and a peace treaty, that he would put more sanctions, more tariffs on Russia, and that he would also increase the spending on Ukraine for armaments. And I thought, oh, well, that's encouraging. I was glad to hear that. And then shortly after his conversation with, where he revealed that he had a conversation with Vladimir Putin, for some reason his tone seemed to change. And he got aggravated when what I saw was that he had a press conference and he was upset because President Zelensky was questioning why he wasn't at the table. I think he was upset because he never signed the mineral agreement. And President Trump, I've followed him for many years in the U.S. And the way he goes about negotiating is he tries to intimidate people. He tries to put you on your back foot to get you frustrated, and I think that's what he was trying to do with President Zelensky. But I was just saddened, disappointed as an American to see that this is how our administration treats foreign presidents.
How do you think that was planned in advance, that Vance was supposed to provoke Zelensky? Or what do you think? What it was? What's the saying it was?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Do you think it was planned that Vance should provoke Zelensky?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was staged. I think it was absolutely staged. I think that President Trump and typically what I've seen in the past is when you have these type of events, they don't last long. They're not televised like this. You don't have a long televised discussion in public. They're done in private. And I think many times the vice president doesn't even attend, and the vice president certainly doesn't state his opinions, unless, of course, you've already discussed it. And in my opinion, I think that President Trump brought in Vice President J.D. Vance to attack President Zelensky, and I think that's what happened. Another thing that I witnessed that made me think that this thing was totally staged and orchestrated was there was a reporter there, and he was the only one who was allowed to ask a question. And his question was asking President Zelensky why he doesn't have a suit on. And it was obviously just to humiliate him. Why would you come dressed like this? Do you own a suit? It's disrespectful to President Trump, to America, to the Oval Office that you don't have a suit on. And to see President Trump and Vice President Vance laughing about it was just disheartening. And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was sitting there, and he had a look on his face that was, I can't believe this is going on. And it turns out that this reporter who was invited in is the boyfriend of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And people who are listening to this podcast who follow U.S. politics understands who that is. And I don't see there's any way that he would have just by chance been standing in that room and allowed to ask a question like that if it wasn't already approved.
And how do you perceive the current statement by American Senator Lindsey Graham that Volodymyr Zelensky should resign?
I think it's ridiculous. It's absurd. If you think back about when this war first started, and President Biden said to President Zelensky, "I'll give you a ride," and he said, "I don't need a ride. I need weapons." Had he decided to leave, if President Zelensky had decided to leave, who knows if we'd even be having this conversation. Things would have been very different. He was a courageous, bold leader to stay. For U.S. politicians to try to say who should be the president of Ukraine, whether he should stay in office or not, we're in the middle of a war. There's martial law. By the Ukrainian constitution, you can't have elections when there's a war going on. During World War II, do you think that Winston Churchill said, "Hey, let's have an election"? No, it was 6 years that Britain went without an election. So to suggest that that President Zelensky should resign, I don't understand why he would say that, and I certainly don't agree with it.
Okay, and we have now some opinion from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he now asking Vladimir Zelensky to reach an agreement with Donald Trump. How likely is this given Trump's rhetoric?
I think it's going to be very difficult. Had these discussions taken place in private, where certainly diplomats can have disagreements and can disagree with each other openly, but it's not in a global forum where everybody sees it. I'm just not sure how you can come back from that. I hope it happens, but I still think that the reason that President Trump did this was he fears that it's going to be difficult to put together this peace agreement. So he's looking for someone to blame. He can't blame Vladimir Putin, because if he blames Putin for it, then he's going to have to turn around and support Ukraine and offer them more weapons. The easy way out is to try to set up President Zelensky, in my opinion, and make him the fall guy and say that he's the one who doesn't want to come to the table. He's the one who doesn't want peace. He's the one who doesn't, who's not willing to compromise.
And now we have such situation that Trump says that you can't talk bad about Putin, you need to end the war and bring peace. It seems like if Putin is not involved in Ukraine, do you, your American friends, your very own, support such rhetoric of Trump? Or what do you think about it? It seems yes.
I'm sorry, there's a real political divide in the U.S. right now. It has been for a number of years, but between the Democrats and the Republicans, the conservatives and the liberals. And oddly enough, the Democrats, the liberals, are the ones who are wholeheartedly supporting Ukraine and President Zelensky. And many of the conservatives, or the mega Republicans, although they were when the war first started, that certainly has that support has diminished. And I think a big reason for that is that President Trump has been so vocal about Ukraine and about the money we're spending and about how he wants the war to stop. And there's a good portion of his base, I think, who just listen to anything he says. That's why he'll come out and say things that are just factually not true. Like, Ukraine started this war, that President Zelensky's popularity rating is 4%, when it's, I think last week it was 57%. Just things that are not true, but that people who just blindly support him won't question.
Do you think there is any danger for the United States in this, in the event of rapprochement with Russia? And I understand that you are not a political analyst, but maybe you can say your own opinion.
Well, I think the risk of it is, I think the only reason that Putin wants to have a treaty and to have a ceasefire is so that he can rebuild his army, so that he can reconstitute things. He can rebuild his military. He can give his soldiers a rest. He can conscript and train more soldiers. He can get more equipment because they've lost so much. It'll give them a chance to fortify their positions. So I think that he'd like to have a ceasefire so he can have a delay. I don't think without strong security guarantees that Putin and Russia will stick to any agreements, to stick to any treaty. They've shown in the past that they don't. They break every agreement that they ever sign. And I think the danger to the U.S. is that that the Trump administration thinks that he can trust Putin. And I don't believe he can. And I also think that that China is watching this very closely. And my fear is that that if they see weakness like this, if they see that Vladimir Putin is allowed to continue like this without pushback from countries like the U.S., that he's going to be emboldened to go and invade Taiwan.
Let's talk about your own story. You came to Ukraine in 2021. What was your job in America? Why did you decide to leave the USA and actually to move to Ukraine?
Oh, wow. I spent 20 years in the home building business in Las Vegas. I started as an on-site agent and worked my way up to being a regional sales director. In 2019, I was widowed for a second time. I had no children, no family. There was no ties. I always loved to travel. I loved adventure, and I especially loved to travel to Italy. I had met my wife online and some friends, and they invited me to take a trip to Ukraine. So I decided to take a trip and visit and see what it was about. I can remember friends of mine when I told them that I was leaving for Ukraine, and they said, "Oh my God, you know how dangerous it is there?" You know, I'd ask them, "What's dangerous? Give me some specifics. What do you think is dangerous?" "Well, I don't know, but I'm telling you, it's just dangerous." But as I found out, I absolutely loved my first visit here to Sumy. I loved Ukraine. I met my now wife, and I made some very, very good friends. And after I spent a week here, I think, and when I returned, I thought, I think I want to move.
So it doesn't stop you, the fact that at that time there was already a war in Ukraine, not a full scare, but it was quite dangerous.
Well, when I decided to take my first trip to Ukraine in 2019, I really wasn't aware of the war in Donbass and Lugansk. I hadn't heard much about it. What had been in the news was the fact that then President Trump had made a phone call to President Zelensky asking him to investigate Biden's son Hunter, which President Zelensky refused to do. And I think that's another reason why President Trump does not like President Zelensky. I think he blames him for losing that election in 2020. But on my first trip, I really didn't know until I got here, and I met my wife and friends, and we talked about living in Ukraine and what it was like. We talked about the war in Donbass and the fighting that was going on in Donbass and Lugansk. They told me about Maidan, which I had never heard of. I saw a movie about it. So I learned so much just in one trip. But that didn't deter me. I never thought, I can tell you that when I decided to make the move, I never thought there would be a full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
And when the full scale began, how did you perceive it? Was a desire to live for the USA, at least understanding the danger to life, to your life, to your wife's life?
My wife and I got married on February 22nd, 2 days before the war started. And we went from such great happiness and joy, euphoria, to waking up 2 days later, finding out that Putin and Russia had invaded Ukraine, full-scale invasion. I think we stayed in Sumy for about 3 weeks. And I remember there was a missile attack, a rocket attack, that killed, I think, 21 people. They blew up a number in a residential neighborhood. They blew up homes, and And at that point, my wife and I said, it's not safe for us and for our children to stay here. So we made a decision to go to Western Ukraine so we could be closer to one of the border states, either Poland or Romania or Moldova, so that if we had to leave, it wouldn't be, we'd be close and we could get across the border quickly.
And what do you think about the U.S. policy in support of Ukraine for the entire period in the beginning of the full-scale invasion?
I've been a registered Republican my whole life, so I've always, I voted for President Trump in 2016 and 2020. I didn't vote for him this year. I felt like the support that the Biden administration was giving to Ukraine, without American weapons, I think things would have been very different. But I also felt that it was a slow drip of military support coming to Ukraine. Just enough so that Ukraine wouldn't lose, but so that that we wouldn't just overpower and win this war quickly. I think that the Biden administration was afraid of escalation, one thing. I think also that they wanted to prolong this war to drain Russia, to drain the military power of Putin and the Russian army. And I think had Kamala Harris been elected, I don't think things would have changed, and I think this war would have dragged on for who knows how long.
And what do you think? What do you think of this Trump's position that he blaming Biden in all the troubles, even calling him a stupid president the day before on the conversation with President Zelensky?
This is Donald Trump's what you call MO or modus operandi, how he acts. During the presidential elections, I can remember he would give everybody names. It was Crooked Hillary for Hillary Clinton. It was for his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, it was Little Marco Rubio. And he used to say, "Do you ever notice how small his feet are?" And he does those things. He says those things to try to take away their confidence, to diminish people, to put them on their back foot, so that he can take control. And I think it's the same reason that he said the things he does or he did about President Zelensky. I think it's all theater, trying to intimidate. I think that's how he likes to negotiate. And in my opinion, President Trump is driven by two things, and it's money and power. And the things that he admires, especially in world leaders, he admires power. And in my mind, the three leaders that you see that he admires the most are Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un from North Korea. And why does he like them? Why does he admire them? Because it's absolute power. He likes the way they rule, and I think that he sees himself that way. And he wants to demand that kind of respect. And I just don't agree with it.
I'd like to ask, have you visited the USA in the last 3 years? If so, is your impression of the perception of the war in Ukraine by the Americans who know about our war only from the media, in fact? How different is it? And if you remember, Vance said yesterday that he knows everything about Ukraine and all his facts based on the stories he saw in the internet.
Yeah, I loved when I heard that when President Zelensky said he invited him, "Why don't you come to Ukraine, so you can really see?" And he said, "No, I've seen it in the videos and the news clips. You can't understand what's going on from 5,000 miles away watching some video clip." But no, I haven't been back in 3 years. When this war first started, so many of my friends wrote to me, oh my gosh, Bill, how are you? I can't believe what's going on. Are you safe? Wow, what a great country you decided to move to. What a brave bunch of people the Ukrainians are. It's amazing how they're defending and fighting for their country. And that we wish we had a president like Vladimir Zelensky. This guy is absolutely incredible. As the war went on, I think that support started to wane a little. And part of it was because of President Trump and the things that he was saying. And I don't know. I'm not sure at this point how this dust up, what happened yesterday at the Oval Office, how that's going to impact his support in the U.S. I think that his mega base, they'll probably be happy with what he did, but I think that he's going to lose more support than gain support with what happened with President Zelensky.
Am I right? You are an American living in Ukraine. You're proud of our president, of Zelensky, and you think he's very good political?
I think that President Zelensky is going to go down in history as one of the most courageous leaders of our time. And when I said earlier, when President Biden offered him a ride, and he said, "I don't want to ride. I need weapons." That's a brave man. That's not a dictator. That's a man who loves his country and who stayed here and fought for his country and tried to keep everything together to defend his homeland. I think things would have been very different. Who knows where we'd be if he had left. I'm very, very, very proud of President Zelensky. I think he's a great leader. I think he's a great man, and I wish him the best.
And how do you see the future of the Ukraine-American relations? What is your? Do you have some vision how it should be?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball with what was going to happen. My hope is that I feel optimistic that this war is going to end this year, that something's going to change, and that we're going to find peace. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think it can happen. Certainly, there's going to have to be concessions, but I think that's better than having this war drag on for another who knows how long, 2-3 years. I would hope that there's peace, that we find peace, and that we can begin the rebuilding process, the restoration of everything that's been destroyed and damaged here, the restoration of our lives, of people who are traumatized, who have lost their loved ones. For the military soldiers, I can't imagine what it's like every day being out there in the front, in the trenches on the front line, bullets flying over your head in the cold, not knowing if you're going to see tomorrow or not, but they're brave, brave men fighting for their country. What's really for me is a testimony to what the Ukrainian people are like and what the Ukrainian soldiers are like. We go to the store and we see these soldiers, and they're buying cat food, they're buying dog food, because you know why? They all love pets. They love their animals, and they have all these animals that they have with them on the front, cats and dogs, and they're just so kind to it, And that's just kind of a glimpse, I think, into somebody's heart and their soul. But these are brave men fighting for our country, defending our country under very, very difficult circumstances, and my heart goes out to them.
Today Vladimir Zelensky in London, and he'll have some meetings. And how do you think should European leaders, what they should do today, and what democratic Europe actually should do in the situation for the Ukrainian safety, for their own?
You know, there are certain things that I agree with President Trump about, and one of them is that our European allies needed um, to increase their defense spending. You know, for as long as I can remember back, probably 3-4 presidencies, U.S. presidents have been saying, you know, by the NATO doctrine, they were supposed to be dedicating 2.5% of their GDP to defense spending, and it wasn't happening simply because they said, well, we have our big brother, the U.S. is going to protect us. We don't need to. And certainly now all that has changed, and they're realizing it. You know, maybe a little late. But I think that the European countries, our European allies, understand now that they have to support Ukraine. You know, Ukraine is we are the wall, you know, the hedge, the bridge that stands between Russia and Europe. If Vladimir Putin were to take Ukraine, there's no question he'd go right through the Baltic states to Poland into Germany, and then what? So I think that our European allies need to. I think they understand now with what's happened with President Trump. I think he's managed to wake them up. I think he's alienated the NATO allies as well. I'm not sure how they're going to put this all together. Certainly, they're going to have talks. I know they have scheduled meetings, and I hope that somehow they realize that they need to get more support to Ukraine, that this war needs to end, that somehow we need to have some sort of a peace agreement that has some protection, where we know that it won't happen again. The war won't happen again. That Putin won't just come right back and in 2 years start this whole thing again.
Mr. Vincent, I very appreciate you for this conversation, and I'd like to remind our viewers that today with me on the stream was Charles William Vincent, an American who lives in Ukraine. Thank you so much.